Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor, hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy. Moving right along on this Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, we'll head back out to the Dim's Firearms Hotline. That's where we find our guy, Sharief Ishaq from WDSU, talking Saints. Sharief, how are we doing?
I was doing good until I got to episode two to Swamp Kings and remembered that LSU lost that '06 game in the Swamp because of 4 hideous turnovers by Jamarcus Russell.
I was a freshman at that game. I rode in the bed of a truck from where we were staying, like 40 miles in and out to Gainesville, and we lost. It was not great.
Nope, fumble at the goal line. I remember everything from that game.
Not super awesome. You were not in L.A., which was not super awesome in terms of weather. What have been the stories from your cohorts down there about Hurricane?
Hurricane might have been a little more like bigger than it should have been, probably. Honestly, I think everything turned out to be fine, which doesn't surprise me because everything we're used to most of that here, except for the earthquake. I think the biggest surprise that a $5.5 billion stadium has leaks, which that is probably needs to be fixed from old Cronkite and Company over there, or is it whoever
they built it? They built it assuming there was no weather. That's the assumption you work on down there in LA.
Yeah, it's an indoor/outdoor stadium. I'm not sure if Kroenke thought it was going to hold up right, and then it had some leaks in it. Had some leaks in their team. The Chargers, not his team, but his stadium. So it is what it is. I mean, it was, I thought it was a really good football game for the Saints.
Yeah.
Good. And then, of course, there's some bad, not many starters. I mean, Trevor Penning pretty much was the only starter. But for the most part, I saw a lot more good than bad.
What was the biggest positive?
I think the biggest positive is Kendre Miller. He hurt his knee a week before. Here he sprained his knee and would be a couple weeks, and boom, he's back out there for joint practices. Back in there in the game, not just the catch, not the runs. He had a nice blitz pickup, to give Jameis some time. And that's one thing he's been working with Joel Thomas, the running backs coach, on working on his game and elevating his game is, blitz pickup. You saw that in that game. That was one positive. Another positive to me, 2 more positive. Jalen Smith, the linebacker.
Yep.
I keep telling you that's the way to build a little bit of depth. They need to find someone else or another 2 players they can rely on in case there's an injury that happens during the season. Jalen Smith, looked pretty healthy, made a play on 2 plays on third down, one stopping a guy short of the sticks, and then he made a play in pass defense. And that's something that's encouraging whenever you play in Dennis Allen's defense, Joe Wood's defense, that he could do that. And the defensive line, that defensive line, they did their job. They did their job, especially. It's nice to see that Brian Brzee got back there, got a fumble recovery, Payton Turner creating it. Those are the 2 guys you hope that, you continue seeing growth from in this preseason. And then Brzee had another knockdown, and Colin Saunders, just watching him chase down, Easton Stick in that goal line situation and forcing a bad throw. That's those are 3 very encouraging signs that I saw from that game.
Buying anything in the Payton Turner stock? I know it's against the second team, but it was a pretty impressive move.
Well, for him, yeah, it's a really good move for him to get to the quarterback and knock the ball out. And for him, whenever he was hurt, I think it's not being able to practice kind of limits your development. So now that he's healthy and practicing this training camp, it feels like he's still playing catch up from the last couple of seasons. And he's having a good camp. We'll be honest, he's having a good camp, and he needs to continue to show those strides before the season kicks off. Can't be a healthy scratch. Your first-round pick from a couple years ago cannot be a healthy scratch like he's been in the previous 2 seasons. But, he's continuing to show the signs of a guy who's maturing and developing for this defense.
Where are you on Traquan Smith in making this team?
The dreaded question. How many receivers, and will Traquan be one of those receivers?
I mean, I feel like A.T. Perry's in front of him.
It feels like they're, the best ability is availability, and he's not available right now.
Yeah.
Now he's behind the 8 ball. Will he make the team? If he does he start on IR? How long is that groin injury, going to keep him out? I mean, they're about to practice here in 30 minutes. We'll see, like maybe Dennis gives us an update on Traquan Smith. How far out is he? Same with Rashid Shaheed. But if you had to ask me now if they keep in 6, I would think he's probably one of the 6 because of his ability to block. Catching has been suspect, of course. He's dropped some, key passes in his time, but his blocking is what's kept him on this team and playing and being able to sometimes show up on special teams. But I'd assume right now, if they're keeping 6, he's probably one of the 6. But as you said, A.T. Perry, hey, look, man, these games, he's continuing to show that he deserves to be one of the 6. And, Keith Kirkwood is another one of the guys who's showing that he should be one of the 6.
What about Jimmy Graham? I know it's a different position, but same group.
Well, and then there's 2 different sides of the story with Jimmy Graham.
Start with that, because I opened the show saying I just don't know anything about that. Tell us what you can about the episode.
Well, we only know as much as Dennis is telling us.
Yeah.
It was a medical episode, it's a seizure. Maybe we hear more about it this week, and his what kind of care he's had, what Dr. Amos has found out, and what's going on exactly, what led him to that episode, that medical episode. That's the key off the field. On the field, are they going to keep 4 tight ends? Is he guaranteed a spot on this team without anything that happened? He's probably fighting for a position on this team. My gut says, man, I know Taysom, they list him as a tight end, but we all know he's the jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife. He does everything. I still think, if everything checks out all right, I still think Jimmy Graham, you can use him in his specialty roles. You can't teach size. How can you say it's hard to teach 6'6" and the guy go get the ball? Do they still see that in him at 36 years old? Part of me says yes. I still think he can make this team and contribute in the red zone.
How do you feel about the offensive line?
Ugh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a spot. That's one of the areas where I'm like, oh man, I'm a little concerned going into the season. I feel good about the 5, sometimes 6 on that offensive line. But after that, a lot of teams are struggling with the depth along their offensive line after they're 5 or 6. But after that, man, it gets scary. And it's not a good scary. It's a bad scary. It's somebody goes down, which happens every year with the Saints, or 2 go down. You're starting to ask yourself, man, could they hold up for Derek Carr and the running backs? And, show Trevor Penning, I'm glad they played him. I really am glad they played him against the Chargers. I know it was the second team, but at least he got more valuable reps. He got a lot last year. Looked good for all but, 2 of his 15 snaps. He had some pancakes, but he also got beat a couple times, which is, I guess it's going to happen. Not the greatest of things, but it's going to happen. You don't get that many snaps. But it's after those 6 guys who are 7, who's going to be 8, in case, 2 guys go down. And then that worries me. That worries me a lot because you could have Derek scrambling, or you could not have good pass protection. You're not going to have that great run blocking if your guys aren't healthy. And the guys behind those 2 or behind those, 5 or 6, it could be bad. That is worrisome for sure.
I heard Charles Handegriff ask Chris Rothboglu this earlier, and I thought it was a reasonable question, or an interesting thought at least. Have you seen enough from Groupie to dangle Will Lutz in front of Sean Payton up there in Denver and say, hey, what can you give us for Lutz? We've got a kid that we think can do this. Can you give us a pick or 2?
Well, both guys have been kicking the ball and kicking it really well during camp and these games.
Can't use 2 kickers.
I just don't know, man. Sean is like revolving kicker guy.
I know.
He will cut a kicker after missing 1 kick. That's just been his thing with the Saints. He'd cut a guy. Maher's struggling in Denver. He's going to need a kicker. And if it isn't Lutz, maybe he goes and gets Blake Groupie when they let him go. But to me, I'm still sticking with Will Lutz. I'd rather, the guy who's been there, done that. He's got a little bit of a stronger leg. He's been showing a 60-plus in practice and in pregame. Those are, the kicks that the Saints are going to need. Groupie is right around the, 57, 58 yards. I don't know how many times you're going to count on your kicker to kick 60-plus, but you never know. If you need, some points at the end of the half or against the Vikings last year in that game where he would have made it if he didn't double doink it, would have got some leg on it. But to me, I think it's Will Lutz's job to lose still. But it's been a good battle. Groupie is a good kicker, and I think he's going to be on a roster as someone, someone would be foolish not to take him if the Saints don't keep him.
What can the Saints accomplish here this week as they enter the Texans game?
A little bit more of the position battles. Look at, Alontae Taylor, Paulson, and Debo getting a little bit more run like they did last week. They still are trying to figure out who is going to be that second cornerback opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. I want to see more from the offensive line. That offensive line, those like you talked about a minute ago, a couple of those guys are going to have to really flash and show, they can play and they can be counted on when the season starts. Just a couple of guys go down. Continue progress from Isaiah Foskey. And there was one play that, Dennis Allen got into him for not making, play in that red zone, missing the tackle. You invested a second-round pick in him. Yeah, he's, continuing to improve, but, hey, he's got to, continue to show something in the game. And I'd like to see a little bit more from the linebackers and receivers. I feel like I'm naming everyone, but it's fun to watch the receivers, man. You're seeing Shaq Davis make plays. You see John Trey Kirkland make plays. These guys are fighting to be on this roster, whether it's special teams or you're the number 6 receiver. It's fun to watch that. So I know people don't like the third preseason game, but it's fun to watch because, guys are on the bubble fighting for their roster spots and, trying to make this team. So that's an enjoyable part of the third preseason game, watching the guys who are trying to make that 53-man roster, and the Saints got some spots there open.
So what's the indication on what you'll see in terms of participation? They sat all the starters after some tough joint practices, none of those this week, and we haven't seen Dennis Allen coach 3 preseason games because they lost one last year.
That's the interesting part with the joint practices getting canceled this week with the Texans. Does Dennis Allen, give them a series or two? Does he go with the starters now because they don't get that joint practice work? If they don't play them a series or two, they're going to go a month in between any action in the game. And you wonder, is that enough? Is that one series enough against the Chiefs? And you look at the other side of it, you don't want to get anybody hurt. You'd hate to start the season with any kind of injuries. I guess we're going to hear from Dennis at 4:30 if what his plan is. And he might not say today. He may say it later in the week if he plans on playing some of the starters. But part of me wouldn't be shocked if they didn't see the field again and they just continue rolling like they did with the last game plan for the game against the Chargers and seeing who they can find that can make this roster in certain positions.
We'll talk next week, Sharief. Thanks.
All right. Anytime, Hunt.
Hey, it's Hunt. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.